Welcome to the Hustle, Grind, Shine, and Reignite podcast. I'm your host, Jessica Hartley. Join me on another journey with amazing and talented professionals of color. Laugh and cry and take notes, but most of all, be inspired. All of this and more on our next episode of Hustle, Grind, Shine, and Reignite. Let's go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Hustle, Grind, Shine, and Reignite. I am your host, Jessica Hartley, and I am so pleased to introduce you to my guest today. My guest is Tanarra Schneider, and she is a cultural strategist and a managing director at Accenture. She is also a certified badass, and I am so excited to have her with me today. Welcome, Tanarra, to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Seriously.
I'm so excited. Well, we're going to get into all the juicy bits and all the good things, but I'm going to take you back to the beginning. We love to start with childhood, and some people's childhoods are amazing, some are challenging, but would love to hear about growing up. What was home life like? What was growing up like? And what did you want to be? We always love to kind of start with kind of where we were and what we thought we wanted to be. And as many of us, as you know, in our careers, especially as women and women of color, usually where we start is not where we are today. And it's a nice little journey along the way and sometimes a roller coaster ride. And so we'll get into that. But take us back to the beginning. Where did you grow up, and talk a little bit about little Tanarra for us?
Oh, little Tanarra. Wow. Yeah, so I am sitting now and did grow up in Chicago. I'm a born and bred Chicagoan. It's interesting though, I was thinking about this. I really am like a product of this city because I was born on the south side, grew up on the north side. My parents moved back to the south side, so I did too. And then moved to the west side. Like I've lived a little bit of everywhere. So I really am genuinely like a true product of Chicago. I left for a while and swore I was never coming back here, and clearly never say never because it'll get you every time.
I sure will. I mean, I said that about Georgia. I just knew, I was like, move back to Georgia. And yeah, here, I mean, New York, all over. And here I am back. So it's amazing how we wind up back where we started. Different, but
it is. It's different. But yeah, I'm biracial. My mom's white, my dad's black. And I grew up in Chicago in a time when I think Chicago was really in transition. So I think I probably felt pretty at home here, always being a little bit between lots of worlds. Yeah, we've, just like real quick on the family side, because you're right, not everybody's childhoods are easy. Frankly, mine was fairly easy. I was really privileged to have a mom who worked her butt off. So I went to a wonderful private school. That was not always easy. I credit a lot of my success, I think, in later years to the education I have. I also credit my therapy bills to the school I went to. So there's a lot in that.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I grew up a kid of the city, very much ambitious and silly and wonderful. And I was born in the 70s, I was born in 75. So, I got the benefit of the wonderful silliness of the 80s and some of the craziness of that. And, watching America also grapple with itself in the wake of like the end of the Cold War and all sorts of other stuff, right? And I lived really close to Boys Town. So I grew up with this sort of really adventurous sense of who you could be.
Yeah.
But also in a household that was very clear that I was going to go to college and have a job that earned money and did all of those things, right? Like I was going to be all those things. I wanted to be a dancer. I didn't care about any of that. I wanted to be a dancer.
And did you dance? And did you dance in middle school and high school?
My entire life. I started when I was 4 and I danced my entire life until I could not dance anymore, which was in my 20s. Started out in ballet.
Yeah, as many of us do. I did ballet as well. Yeah.
And then, what at the time would have been like lyrical and jazz, what I think we now think of as contemporary, when you sort of meld all those styles together. But yeah, so really like deep ballet roots, and then some lyrical and some jazz, and performed in, musicals and stuff like that in school, and, couldn't sing to save my life, but I was always like, waving a rose in the back of the chorus, right? Like I could dance,
I got the chorus girl too. Yeah, me and the singing. I can do a little ditty bop here and there in the shower, but other than that,
yeah, I can carry a tune in
not
a bucket.
singing
That's
solo.
like, and
Pretty
I'll
much.
sing karaoke because it's supposed to be bad, but that's about as far as we take that.
So now talk to me about that delta. I feel like us of this generation, and especially the parents and the generations before, there was like if you could afford to send your kid to college, even if they couldn't go, you went. My parents were both college educated as well, very blessed in that respect. But though it comes with expectations. And I've been telling folks recently, I'm like, hey, I wanted to be an actress. I wanted to be a star and I loved acting and being on stage and did plays and all of that, but there was always this underline of that's cool, that's a hobby. You need a degree and a real job and all those things. So how did you square that when you went to college? And what did you major in? And how did that then get you into, I guess, the start of your professional career, if you will?
Yeah, I'm not sure I ever fully squared it. I think a couple things happened along the
Mm.
way that probably made it easier. So when I say I attribute my therapy bills to the school I went to, I was not kidding. It was not an easy place to go to school. It afforded me a lot of opportunities. We had amazing arts programs, and I was able to dance at that school like I was dancing in a company. Like we had amazing teachers and things like that, and that was
Mm.
incredible.
Mm. Yeah.
But a couple things did happen. One, my self confidence was absolute garbage, and so
Mm.
I ate my way through middle school, and I played a lot of sports and I danced, so it kept me, I think healthy, but certainly
Yeah.
not petite in any way. And
Yeah.
I'm already almost 5'9". So
I was gonna say you're tall, tall girls. Yeah.
probably wasn't going to be a ballerina. And frankly, by the time I got to high school, I also had diverse interests. I played basketball along the way. I had played volleyball and softball as well. So I was really into sports at the same time. I was also never going to be a professional dancer. I got hurt really badly when I was 17. I tore my labrum in my right hip. Yeah,
Oh my goodness.
dancing.
Oh man, I mean, those are things that as an adult are hard to navigate. But even with the healing powers of being young and being 17, but very traumatic.
It was. And I think the pain was such that it was, how do I just get through this so I can keep doing what I love to do? And, at the
Hmm.
time, that was all about cortisone therapy, right? So I was getting cortisone shots so that I could keep dancing, and that did more damage in the long run than anything else. But
Yeah.
by the time I got to college, I graduated, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I thought I wanted to go into physical therapy. There were probably some reasons for
Mm.
that, right? I had spent quite a bit of
Yeah.
time dealing with my own physiology and everything else. And I was like the trainer for the boys cross country team. And so I thought I wanted to get into physical therapy. It was at least an avenue to something that seemed interesting. And I
Yeah.
went to University of Illinois, and my first year, my freshman year, biology 120, because I was going to be a biology major pre-PT. The class was 750 people in the dark at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Oh
How
my
many of those
gosh.
classes do you think I stayed awake for?
Those classes. Oh man, they were always so hard.
They call them weed out classes for a reason, right?
Yes, they do.
So
Yeah.
I was good at biology, I was good at chemistry, but the structure of it just didn't work for me. And so I eventually found my way into two things. I found my way into an English lit program, which I was always super intrigued by stories, whether it was, writing them, reading them, acting them, whatever it was. And I was really intrigued by the fact that I had studied so many dead white men in high
Mm.
school that I minor in African American studies. So I needed to go study people who look like me, read people who look like
Yeah.
me, dig into that part of
Yeah.
my life a whole lot more. So that got me through college in technically 3.5 years. The biggest accomplishment for me, and I think the thing that maybe was one of the things that pushed me, was I spent a lot of time around people who were really smart trying to figure out what they wanted to do. And a lot of my friends have ended up being teachers in one way or another. And so it's like maybe education, right? Maybe education's the
Yeah.
route. And I did
Yeah.
actually both participate in and lead the dance company at the African American Cultural Center in college. And
Wow.
it was great, and I loved teaching dance. Like, I've always loved that part. I love choreography. I think I like choreography more than I like dancing, and so that has led me to this space of, like, creating for others.
Yeah.
I choreographed West Side Story as the spring musical for college,
And everybody's talking about it now with the movie coming
Yeah,
out
I'm
and all
so
of that too.
excited.
So
I'm so excited.
it's gonna be good.
But all of that led me to be like, I still don't entirely know. So I think I'll go to graduate school. So I went to grad school at UCLA to get a dual master's in education and African American studies. It was the worst decision of my life and the best decision of my
Oh
life for
no.
so many reasons.
So tell me about the why was it the worst? Well, no, let's start with the worst and then go to why was it the best. So sometimes I like to tell people, I say sometimes you do something to know that you don't want to do it, right? So very curious.
So I have a deep both love and loathing for academia at this point in my life. It has actually kept me
Mm,
from going back to school again, except for one instance, which is a very specialized moment in my life. But I went to UCLA, had a fellowship to UCLA, which there were only two of us that year who were fellows. It was a
wow.
huge honor. And the dean of the program was batshit crazy, which was heartbreaking because she was a black woman from Chicago. And I thought
Mm,
it was going to be amazing. And she took me under her wing, and I thought this was going to be
yeah.
fantastic. And I had to have an on campus job. And so I worked for her, and it turned out that she was disorganized, unethical, all sorts of stuff that just really was just it destroyed me in so many ways.
Hmm.
It was also during Proposition 209 in California when they were trying to rescind all of the ethnic studies programs because they were trying to do away with affirmative action.
I remember that.
And our program was a program and not a department on the Afro-Am side. So we lost all of our professors back to their home department. So then I tried to rely on education to get me through that first year, thinking that I would spend time in my education classes. And the reason that I went there was because there was a professor there who I thought was a god. He had written so many amazing books around progressive education, and I was so excited.
Mm,
And we had a class together on Malcolm X, and he basically made a pass at me in like the worst possible way. And it was like my eyes were just so open to like the worst of humans in these spaces of
mm,
privilege
yeah.
where they feel like they can wield
Yes.
power in any way they want to. And because you
Yep.
are stuck there in their minds and there's nowhere you can go, they just
Yeah.
use you in any way they see fit. And so I was really, really, really like just a mess. I got a job interning at the Museum of Tolerance that summer while I was deciding whether I was going to stay or go. And
Yeah.
that was the turning point for me. And I only know that in hindsight. That it did not occur to me then, but it
Probably
was
didn't it didn't even feel like it in the
amazing.
moment.
It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah. Talk to me about that. How did you even find out about the opportunity there? And what did you do?
I was looking for a place where I could leverage the technology knowledge I was starting to build because part of the work I was doing under this professor was building the first website for studies in the African diaspora. And so I had really started to understand technology and I was building my own computers and I was doing all these things. And they were looking for, I was just literally looking through job listings and had at least access to like grad level job listings because of my position with this professor. So I happened to come across a few postings and they were looking for folks who were really interested in the kind of the intersection of stories and culture and could talk about and think about technology. And so I went, I applied and right, this is the day where you send a resume in. Like there's no LinkedIn. I'm not applying for anything online. This is a
Resume. Yeah, like
paper resume had to be
people
submitted.
don't know how good they don't know how good. I mean, I get the automated systems now are awful, but I'm like, y'all don't remember when
Mm-mm.
you had to go get the special paper from Staples or Office Depot and
The resume paper in the
do
box, man.
and you got the folder if you could afford it because that stuff was expensive at 20, 30, $40 for the paper, the two types of paper, and then the matching envelope and writing nicely and all of that, and then handwriting thank you notes if you did that as well. But people have no, they don't know how good it
No,
is
and it
now.
was it was so great because I was invited in for the interview, and I show up, and I mean the Bay of Hishoa is this beautiful Holocaust museum in Los Angeles. I'm a black woman, but my last name is Schneider, so there's no pictures on the internet, y'all. I want to emphasize this, so you can
So like,
imagine
I mean, it
when I
was you
show up,
definitely surprised.
and they're like, Tanarra Schneider? And I was like, yep, that's me. Hi, how you doing? It was just sort of this hilarious moment, but it was so beautiful for me because my family and my mom is Jewish by heritage. I grew up in synagogues with my best friends as a kid. We didn't practice, but I know so much about it and I've
Mhm.
spent so much time around it. It was just such a wonderful, like, homecoming in some ways
Mm.
because I got to explore
Yeah.
so much of who I am in a very different way that I never thought I would be able to, and learn so much more about myself and about justice and about the way we treat people
Mm.
and about the true, genuine source of evil and fear and how you overcome that. And there were Holocaust survivors that were there every week telling their stories. And they had an exhibit on Rwanda at the time. So I got to learn about that. And I was a docent
Yeah.
in the Holocaust exhibit. And then I got to work on programs for kids because education was one of the things I was focused on. I got to write, exhibit work and tour work for kids who were too young to be on the museum floor. 'Cause it's pretty rough.
Yeah. It's very.
And so it just taught me a lot about how do you take the skills you have and make them relevant in a space that seems entirely foreign. And I think that's probably
Mhm.
one of the hallmarks of my career.
So, would you say that was the point really for you where you saw, well, I guess first, did you go back? Did you go back and finish? Or was that like the catalyst that said, I found the purpose and calling that is not in this place?
No, the catalyst was my parents. My parents called me and said, "You're coming home." Actually, moreover, my dad called me, who never calls me to tell me
Really?
anything. My dad called me and said, "I'm coming to get you. You have a week, pack your stuff."
Wow.
Because they were so worried about my mental health. They
Yeah.
were so worried about me that
Hmm.
I tend to be fairly rebellious. So I don't always listen. I also know when to listen.
Yeah.
And I knew when to listen. I knew I had to listen. There was no magic moment. There was no light bulb that went off. I was fully
Hmm.
immersed in that
Hmm.
experience and it was
Hmm.
wonderful. I still didn't entirely
Yeah.
know what to do with it, but I also did
Yeah.
know that UCLA was not going to be a place that I could exist and be healthy.
Yeah, we could do episodes for days on the challenges of of academia, and then also how people of color experience academia, both as students and graduate students, but also as professors having to navigate, not unlike how we have to navigate the troubled waters of corporate America, right?
Indeed.
Every day. So you moved into, I mean, ultimately, you moved into this amazing frontier. And I call it a frontier because, every day things are changing and growing and moving and shifting as we think about the intersection of design and technology and user experience kind of all coming together and what that means, not just in connecting, right, from a capitalist perspective of connecting brands and consumers together, but I mean, it is also about creating better experiences for patients in healthcare, right, and things like that. Talk a little bit about your career arc. So you went back home. Dad was like, I'm coming to get my girl. We've got to go. We love you. We care about you. God bless those parentals and guardians and just angels
Yeah.
that look out for us, that know better for us
Yeah.
even when we don't. God bless us that have those in our lives. So, talk a little bit about that sort of career arc that got you sort of leaving
Yeah.
UCLA, going back to Chicago, and then kind of forging a new path from there.
Yeah, it's a giant loopy roller coaster. I mean, it'd be great if it was an arc, but it's a weird loopy roller coaster. Yeah, so I went back to Chicago and couldn't find a job. Remember all those resumes we were talking about? Sent out like 40 of those things. Could not find a job. So I started
Yeah.
temping because I needed to make money. I was only going to stay at home for so long. I got a job working for a small finance and insurance brokerage firm called Mesera Financial. And they needed somebody for 8 weeks. Somebody was going out, the executive assistant was going out on mat leave. So I was an EA for 8 weeks. But what happened there was that I was an EA in a technology department. And
Mm.
inside of the technology department, there was a woman who ran all of their internal training. And so, again, right, that pivot of taking skills and things you do that are relevant in different contexts. I took everything I knew about teaching, from teaching dance and all sorts of other stuff, everything I knew about writing because the materials they were using to teach were terrible. And I started teaching classes because they were moving. You had support staff that was moving from like window or typewriters and green screen terminals to Windows and Office.
Yeah.
And that is a leap. And I think
Whew.
that's the
Yes, it is.
beginning of, what you said, like this idea of creating experiences for people that where they can thrive, but frankly start with that just don't suck,
Mm.
things that don't terrify people. And I watched women who were in their 50s close enough to retirement come into my classroom afraid they were going to lose their jobs if they couldn't learn how to use this new software and learn how to use a computer. One woman brought a box of
Yeah.
tissue every day and she cried every day,
Yeah.
right? But I started to realize that there was actually something that was relevant for me that I could do, bringing all bits of me, my creativity, my ability to write, my ability to see people, to take my time, and to teach in a way that was probably much less like corporate version read the manual and a lot more, okay, let's do step one. Now let's do step one and step two. Now let's do step one, step two, and step three, which really, goes back to choreography for me. It's like, how do you build
Mm-hmm.
something, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Routine.
yeah.
Yes.
And so that's, I mean, that's where, like, that is the through line for my career is legitimately creating experiences and systems where people can thrive, but let's start with ones that don't suck. Like we have to start somewhere. And so it's taken me a bunch of different places. I went from there and I got a full-time job there, stayed there for a while, and went to like my first sort of outside consulting company from there, building software to teach people in that same way. Found a company that was really cool at the time that was doing some unique stuff with being able to capture live software and then turn it into a training mechanism where you could make it a safe to fail environment so that you could
Mm.
learn and you could start over again and it didn't mess anything up.
Mm-hmm.
I went and did that, and then I did big systems implementations. Like I went from there to doing big tech and like SAP and PeopleSoft for Tribune Company. And there's just nothing like trying to blueprint a system from the ground up to try to make sure it doesn't suck. And a lot of it,
Yeah.
and a lot of it
Yes.
did.
Yeah. It's hard.
But I learned a lot. And I'm not a technologist, right? I'm a storyteller and I am truly, I am a strategist in so many ways. And I became a designer over time, right? I didn't go to design school and we didn't really know what I didn't know what UX and service design and all those things were then. But as
Yeah.
my career grew and as I started to do other things, like that time at Tribune, really starting to understand the intent and the outcome. And that's what design is, right? It's making the intent and the outcome match one another. And I would just add through a process that is uniquely human and human centered, right? So, really trying to understand and map how people work and what they need from a system and what the business needs. I've been able to carve this really interesting space where I've done everything from do the work that I talked about to move to New York to stand up JetBlue's e-learning platform and program from the ground up. Then I went agency side because I was like, this is kind of cool. What does this look like on the other side? When I did it for
Yeah.
clients like Cartier and Chanel and Citibank, and I think one of my proudest moments is I designed what would become the cooking school for America's Test Kitchen and Cooks
Oh my
Illustrated.
gosh. That's
That
amazing.
was so much fun, and it ties very directly to the one educational experience that I did manage to go back and have, which is I went to culinary school midway through because I needed a break. So after I left Tribune, I took a break for about a year and a half and went to culinary
Mm.
school, and then I cooked for a while. And even that is still about creating amazing experiences for people because I was really interested in catering, not necessarily working
Yeah.
in big kitchens, but in creating
Yeah.
bespoke events, creativity, problem solving, right? It's
Yes.
all there.
Yeah. All
It
the all
just
the all the
keeps
pieces
just
and elements
keeps on
coming together.
going. And I wended my way through a bunch of agencies and ended up where I am now, which was, 7 years of leading design practice inside of Accenture in various ways. And now as the North America lead for leadership and culture, because it's still about now making systems truly organizational systems and companies suck less and spaces where people can thrive. It's the same
Yes.
thing. It's the same exact thing. I just no longer want to talk to you about your technology, which I know
Mm.
is like heresy at the company that I work at. But there are so many brilliant technologists. I need to
Yeah.
be a humanist. And I was a technologist and
Yeah.
designer for 7 years, and now it's time to be a humanist again.
I love that. Time to be a humanless, that suck less and help people thrive. I love that. Talk to me about, thank you for sharing that you took a break because I feel like we don't give ourselves the ability to take a break. And it's hard. And to take a break is also, we'll recognize that there's a privilege in what it means to take a break. And taking a break can mean different things for different people. Sometimes that's a sabbatical, sometimes that's a career pivot or shift. And I guess, how have you, and for many of us, I think it's a journey. You talked about how hard, your mom worked and your mom working hard, and parents working hard. And I think we often come from roots of hardworking guardians and parents. And so we see that hustle and grind, what we didn't see a lot of in a lot of cases sometimes is care for themselves. And we're always, and women are often the caregivers. And I also know that you're, like me, a mother as well. How's your journey been of learning to take care of yourself and what that means for self care, self love, time, and rest? How has that been for you?
Um, Terrible. I'm
Mm.
getting better at it. So part of what started that need to take a break, I was 27. So not particularly old, had not been working that long, but I had been working really hard. So when I was doing all the systems work at Tribune, I was flying back and forth every week, very much like a consulting gig, right? Was at home for maybe 3 days every week, didn't see friends, didn't see family, gained a whole bunch of weight, treated myself terribly, did not work out, was not disciplined about that stuff. And the night before my 26th birthday, I was in a hotel room in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I had a panic attack. Supposed to meet my
Oh,
team for dinner, and I couldn't leave the hotel room. Could not get off the floor. And I knew I could not spend many more days like that if I was going to make it. And I don't mean
yeah.
like, I mean live. If I was going to
You
live,
mean,
I needed to
yeah.
do something else. And I'm pretty sure I told my mother right around that time that when this particular project was done, I was going to leave and go to culinary school. And I was making six figures at 26. So when you say that to somebody who has scrimped and worked their butts off and worked overtime and comes from very meager resources and has made a life for herself working very, very hard, that is like stabbing somebody in the face. And I think she thought I was nuts. But I also knew I had to do it. And I did. And it was absolutely the right thing for me to do. Over time, I've gotten a little bit better at it and I've gotten a little bit worse at it. And a lot of our environments don't create spaces for us to do that, right? We don't, whether you have the privilege or not. And I was privileged enough at the time to have made enough money that I could take that break and go to school. I did some consulting and contracting on the side just because I couldn't help myself. But it is hard, especially when you have kids, to feel like you can take that break. And I am a single mom. Her dad and I share custody. So I am well aware that like I have to be able to take care of her, have to be able to take care of us. And so now I'm trying to get better at boundary setting. I was terrible
Hmm.
about it during the pandemic, which I think a lot of people were.
Yeah.
I was pretty bad at it prior to that, if I'm honest.
I think a lot of us were.
Yeah. And so I'm learning. I'm
Yeah.
learning. I've just taken myself down to a 4 day a week work week. It does mean those Monday through Thursday is real busy, right? It's
Yeah.
really busy. It also really helping me prioritize my time. It's given me an opportunity to be generous. And I know this sounds crazy, but delegating actually is one of the most generous things we can do as leaders. Because when we
Mm.
hold on to everything, our people don't get a chance to learn. They don't get a chance to grow. So I don't tie my daughter's shoes every day because she needs to learn how to tie her shoes. Why would I do all of the work on my team? My team's not going to learn how to tie their shoes. So I am trying desperately to remember that my team is brilliant. The people I work with
Mm.
are entirely capable, and it's actually beneficial for everybody if I step away for a day. As
Yeah.
long as I get my work done and I'm not a bottleneck for anybody else, I should be
Yeah.
able to step away for a day and think and clear my head and be the kind of mother, human being, boss, daughter, friend, all those things I need to be. So I'm learning.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing so much. I think, it's so important that we talk about not only the successes and the wins, but the challenges and the very human challenges. Same for me. I've never been, it's usually just like go, 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 and then crash. You had your crash at 27, 26, 27. Mine was, and you don't realize it again until much later, but I was like crazy busy middle school, high school, college. I was on the Red Cross Youth Board and traveling. I was doing all the things that people do in their 20s when they have a full time job. Internships. I mean, I was going hard. I graduated school in 3.5 years because I got to finish early and all these things. And so I tell people like, well, you moved to New York. What did you do that first year? Like the first 6 months, and 6 to 9 months, right before actually 9/11 happened, I did not do it. I stayed home. I worked at an internet company. I stayed home. I did my job every day. but I went to the library and I ordered takeout and I watched eight at the time. It was on demand. So we didn't have all the things that we have now. We didn't have Netflix. I watched on demand. I didn't do anything. People, you want to go out? No, I didn't go anywhere for like 6 months. It was like literally my version of a crash
Hmm.
because I had burned myself out between high school and college. So still learning what it means to take care of myself and to pause and being mindful also what I'm doing and what I'm showing my children.
Hmm.
Because I watched my mom is amazing, but she never rested. She always worked. She went back to school. She did all these things. It's only now, that she's retired and a grandmother that I see the rest. And I want to try to show my kids now what it means to show my daughter who's 5, what it means to take care of yourself now, what self care means now.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Talk to me about what reignites you. So when we're talking about, self-care and what brings you excitement, what gets you, as you're thinking about even just the future and like what you're excited about, what is coming on the horizon. I know all of us are like, how can we at least move beyond the madness of this pandemic right now so we can start hoping and wishing for future. What does that feel like for you when you think about the word reignite and just sort of fueling yourself? What gets you excited?
I think there's a couple of things that really get me excited. So, one is like so many people, I have decided to redesign my space during this time and actually find that that
Mm.
is huge. So, my house is under construction, it'll be done in a couple weeks. So exciting.
Yay.
But I actually found that that is something that really fuels me. I love hands-on design, and I've gotten so far
Mm.
away as in my leadership roles from making things, right?
Yeah.
So I am a creative. I did go to culinary school. I like to cook. I like to sew. So honestly, like one of the things that fuels me is art projects with my daughter and thinking about what's the right fabric for the curtains for this room. Like all of those details just really do
Yeah.
energize me. And they've given me an idea of like where are some spaces I want to spend time going forward as I think about
Mm-hmm.
5 or so years down the road, what I want to be doing. And I'm not somebody who likes a 5 year plan. Like I've got some next steps, real comfortable with ambiguity. So got a couple things that are on the horizon. And the other one is really getting back into food and storytelling in a material way.
Mm.
So got a
Fun.
little project that I'm working on right now that maybe you'll join me for one of these
Oh, I'm
days.
I'm in. Call
But
me. I'm
but
in.
yeah,
Food and storytelling are two of my favorite things as well.
yeah,
Oh
so
my
I want
gosh,
to
that sounds
explore the
fun.
origins of food and I want to explore the origins of people all at the same
Yeah,
time. So I'm
I love it.
there's some content creation happening in the background that I'm really excited about that should show up in the form of like a video series and podcast at some point next year. So really looking forward to like making things again. I think that's the
Hmm.
stuff that fuels me. I think a lot during the day and I spend a lot of time kind of in thought leadership spaces and coaching others, which is something I absolutely adore doing and I'm
Yeah.
doing more and more of these days, but really want to make some stuff.
Oh, I love it. I love it. The making is so important and something that even me doing this podcast and this show was something for me to say, we do a lot of, to your point, the brain work and a lot of the emotional work in our leadership spaces. I have people call me, they're like, oh, come do this role. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I don't build websites anymore. I coach other, I'm thinking about other things and other challenges and problems and coaching others. To your point, I love the note about the delegation. Like the biggest thing we can do is give responsibility and support to others. So, but I love this idea of getting back to making, and these are forms of making and creation. As we close down, and I just want to say thank you so much for sharing so much about your journey and your life and your story and the roller coaster and all the beauty that has made Tanarra. You are just such a light for many of us. Tanarra and I in the prep session were just sort of chatting, and I was like, I've spent so much time around Tanarra, but we've never actually had the opportunity to work together. But the impact that people can have when they cast a halo and you've never actually worked with them. What advice would you give or as you think about all of the things that you've learned and that you've experienced, as we think about young people, I have so much empathy for the young generation right now that is, high school, college, thinking about career, battling this idea of passion and purpose and profit and what it means to fulfill them and sustain them. What advice, if you had to give one or two pieces of advice to a young man of color, a young woman of color who's navigating some of those challenges in all of the midst of in a pandemic and technology shifts and the metaverse and just so much things that I think are overwhelming our senses and keeping us from just being sort of grounded and rooted. What advice would you have for a young person these days?
I think there's two things. One, it is entirely okay to feel the way that you feel. Don't let anybody tell you you shouldn't feel those things. A lot of people are going to tell you how you should feel about something, whether it's something that happened at work, something that's happening in the world. A lot of people are going to tell you how to feel. Don't let them do that. Feel the way you feel. In doing that, though, you alone are not the answer to any one of these things that we are facing, whether it is inequities in business, lack of diversity in the place you work at, systemic social inequality. You alone are not the answer. So take a breath and focus your impact. If you try to solve everything, you are going to burn yourself out and you will solve nothing. So take a breath, focus your impact, and find others to work with, not just people who think like you and talk like you and look like you. Build a coalition of people you can work with so you have different perspectives and you can challenge one another on your thinking. Echo chambers are very easy to find, especially now and regardless of what side of an issue you fall on. So take a breath, find a coalition, make an impact.
I love that. Focus. I think that is something that I am continuing to work on. Even in my 40s, I am working on focus. Because we want to help everybody. We want to save the world.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to save yourself before you can save the world.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Tanarra. You have been so just delightful and insightful. And I know your story and your journey is going to just really help to ignite and be a catalyst to others. So I appreciate all the honesty and transparency that you have shared with me and with our audience and listeners today. And I am so excited about some of these projects that you have coming up and look forward to hopefully having you back to share more about the new projects that you got on the table. I appreciate you so much. Thanks, Tanarra.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you for listening to another episode of Hustle, Grind, Shine, and Reignite. If you like this episode, like, subscribe, and share on all your favorite podcast platforms. I hope you'll tune in to the next episode featuring another amazing and talented professional of color. In the meantime,